Hey everyone, welcome to the Newman Bond, the official Newman University podcast. Today we have Professor Larry Straub here to learn about Investing 101. So let's get right into it, starting with learning a little bit about you, Larry. Tell us about yourself and what you've done.
Well, I've kind of got two careers. I've got my first life and my second life, I call it. My first life and career was as a business executive for our family business. We had about a 50-year-old family business that we sold in 2019, and I was the chief executive officer of that. I had been, even before that, the chief financial officer. So probably between those two roles, about 27, 28 years I'd been in one of those two roles. So I dealt with finance quite a bit, obviously, in both of those roles. And we had to deal with some investing decisions as well, and then also just my personal portfolio. So it was a wonderful experience running the business, but as with a lot of companies, the environment's changed and we found ourselves in not the best position to be in, so we were able to have a successful sale of the business about 4 years ago. And I had always been an adjunct professor for a number of years for Wichita State and Kansas Wesleyan University, Friends University. For about 35 years I'd taught part-time, and so it was fairly easy for me to transition into a full-time role. Luckily, I was able to find one here at Newman University, and that's what brought me here.
Awesome. Well, speaking of Newman, we did ask students specifically once they graduated if there was a few things that they wish they had learned in their time, either in college or even in high school, and a lot of them talked about how they don't really have any investment experience and how they wish that they did. So if you could you explain why investing is such an important step to take for younger individuals?
Well, there's two sides of the equation. There's what you make, and then there's what you keep. And if you're doing it right, you're saving and you're building up some cash and some equities. And so what you keep out of your check and what you're able to kind of put in as far as building up your nest egg, your personal nest egg, you've got to be able to do some wise things with that. So it's really important for everybody. The first rule of thumb and the first piece of advice I'd have for everybody is just stay up on financing. I go back and forth. I listen. I've got Sirius Radio, and I listen to the Bloomberg channel a lot. And so you hear a lot about financing. You hear a lot about investing. There's other ways to do that. There's tons of stuff out on the web. There's the Motley Fool, I think it is. There's any number of websites out there that can help bring you up to speed on finance and investment strategies, things like that. So I really implore everybody to just be a student of that and just stay up with that. It's very easy to do, easier than it's ever been.
Yeah, be a sponge with so much information out there. I know it can, for me especially, it can definitely be overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
So why is it a better idea to invest than simply just let your money sit? So if the students or the people watching this don't quite know, what would you say the reason is there?
Well, let me tell you, there's different strategies, and the biggest thing that students will need to do, and adults, as you're getting out of school and you're adulting and you're becoming more of a professional in your career and things like that, is you have to be very honest with yourself, and you have to get in tune with your comfort level for risk. And some people have that. Frankly, some people don't. I've got a sister and brother-in-law. He's a CPA. They were very risk averse. And so they kind of did what you just described. They kind of they saved really well. They watched their spending. They were pretty frugal. They built up a really great nest egg, but they did not put it in the market. They used CDs. They used very rock solid, very safe investment tools. So that is a strategy. That is a legitimate strategy. Now, a lot of people look down their nose on it. A lot of people scoff at it because you do kind of leave a lot of money on the table if you do that over decades, which they did. I'm sure they could probably have at least double to triple the money they've got right now, but they didn't like the idea of risking it. So that is one strategy. but most of us, especially when we're younger and we've got more time to recover, traditionally a rule of thumb is if you've got, like me, I'm 63, I'm planning on teaching into my 70s and 80s if my health is good. I'm still working on a 10-year window. As long as you've got a 10-year window to recover from the ups and downs of the markets, you should really take a little bit longer range strategy, which is still what I'm doing. I'm bringing it back a little bit as I get a little bit older, but typically with younger people, you should really be looking at a little bit more aggressive strategies because you do have that longer window. You do have the time to recover from the gyrations and the ups and downs of the markets. So that's a very good strategy. And if you're going to do that, traditionally, you're going to probably get into the stock market. You're going to probably start getting into what's referred to as the equities, where you're actually investing in actual businesses and getting equity in businesses.
Sure. And I've heard great things about certain stocks, terrible things about other stocks. Is there an agenda almost, or is it just based on your own research of very safe stocks to invest in versus very volatile? And I know that in the younger generation, especially my friend group, I hear a lot about crypto and investing in that. What are your thoughts on both of those?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to defer to a very, very wise, sage man, and that's Warren Buffett. And he will tell everybody every step of the way, do not try to pick stocks. It's a fool's errand. Unless you've got, frankly, some kind of inside information, which that's illegal
yes.
In general, but unless you got some kind of inside information, it's kind of a fool's errand to try to go out and beat the market and pick stocks. So there's a few different strategies. One is, and this is what I've done through the years, is I've always hired a professional advisor to work with. I've had the same one all through the years, very, very sharp individual. He's did all of our company 401k plans and worked with all of our employees. But I've always worked with a professional advisor. And so I've been able to kind of talk about my risk profile. I've been able to talk about my comfort level with risk, and then he's able to help put, and plus we talk about the horizon in my window, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, and he's able to help me sculpt a financial plan based on that. And it's a portfolio. I'm not putting all my money in one or two stocks. I've got a pretty broad portfolio. Now, so some people may not want to pay an advisor. Well, I know my son and daughter and a lot of the younger folks, they use things like Robinhood. They use a lot of the tools out there like that. That's an avenue that you can do. You can go out and kind of arrange and buy your own stocks. But even with that, you still have to have a strategy. I tell you honestly, probably a question you're going to ask me, and I'll just pre-answer it. What would I do if I were your age and I knew what I knew now? I think what I would do is I would save the money in a professional advisor, and I would just invest in the S&P index, because most times you're not going to beat that anyway. And just get an S&P index fund. It'll be real low fees, it'll be real low cost, and then you just ride up and down with the S&P. And it's kind of like, the waters go up and go down, but guess what? You're in a boat, so you're going to go up and go down with them. And you're going to go up, and everything's not going to be always up and forward, but you're going to probably have one of the safest, most predictable mechanisms that you'll ever have right there. Save a lot of money, save a lot of fees, and frankly, save a lot of stress. The other thing that I've always been very disciplined in my life is I, almost to a T, I look at my investments with my investment advisor once a year. And I don't go online. I don't even have an online account. I don't look at my investments every day, because if you do that, you tend to get overreactive to the whims of the market. And so now I did that very consistently. But the other thing I did is I've always dollar cost averaged. I don't put all my money in one time a year. If I invest, say, $4,000 in a year, I invest that 1/12 this month, 1/12 that month, and that way you're buying some of it higher, you're buying it lower, but you're dollar cost averaging your investments. And if you do that over a life, you're doing that over your entire lifetime. And so it really makes it to where you're able to ride the cycles of the market and not take as many bad dings as maybe some people might.
Sure, that makes sense. And then, did you have an opinion, or do you invest in crypto, or is that not your favorite thing to do? Do you?
Well,
rather do stocks?
I will qualify this answer before it even comes out of my mouth. I am probably a bit of an old fuddy-duddy when it comes to that. You know, I
could have fooled me.
Well, I'll be real honest with you, and this is just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth, and which is probably not much, but I do not get crypto.
Sure.
And again, you talk to Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, his partner, they will tell you the same exact thing. I think people are already starting to see that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
That FTX scandal, that crypto, they talk about it being a currency. It's not a currency, it's an investment vehicle is all it is. You cannot have a currency that's like that. It does not work. You have nothing to base it on. I think the whole crypto thing to me is just a big scheme that once again rewarded people that are really, really good at math and that don't mind spending a lot of money on computers and mining cryptocurrencies. To me, it's just it's a big scheme. Yeah. And that's my opinion. I'm sure there are a lot of people that disagree with me big time on that, but that's just my opinion.
Well, yeah, and that's why I asked. Yeah. I was just curious because
But no, I do not mess with crypto, sure. And probably never will.
Yeah, I just know it's popular with the younger generation, so that's why I figured it'd be fruitful or helpful to.
And my son and I, by the way, have spirited discussions about this because he doesn't necessarily even agree with me. Sure. He's not investing in it per se, but I think he's a lot more open to it than I would be.
I gotcha. So for people who might not have all that much money to invest, but they have a little bit in their savings account. Mm-hmm. They can afford their monthly bills, and some of it's still sitting in there. Do you recommend people with lower incomes to still invest that might be more worried about losing that little back money that they have, or what would you recommend there?
Well, because of how inexpensive it would be, and you don't have a lot of money anyway, I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money on fees or professional advice. That's where I think I would be looking at a S&P index fund.
Okay.
It's very easy. You don't have to put a lot of work or research into it. You know, honestly, when you're building your career early on, you want to focus on your career because that's going to be your goose that lays the golden egg. That's going to be the thing that funds you and funds your investment for the rest of your life. So specifically that first 5 to 10 years, you really want to get focused on your career, grow your prospects with your career, and maybe even continue to grow your education. You might want to get an MBA, or you might want to get some advanced training in education. And Newman offers an MBA, by the way. No, just a little plug. So you want to focus on growing career and stuff. I don't, unless a person just really is juiced and really enjoys doing all that stuff, I don't know that I would spend a lot of time tending my investments. So I'd find something fairly inexpensive, still somewhat aggressive, which the S&P is, that will give you good growth potential, but something that you're not going to be risking what little bit you've got out in the market. If you truly go out and pick stocks and you're out there really playing that game, honestly, you might as well go to the casino and play the craps table. Sure. Because that's in essence kind of what you're doing. You don't have any more control over it a lot of times than that. So I think that would be the biggest thing I'd advise anybody just kind of starting out with their investing career.
Gotcha. Now, are there pros besides the fact that you can correct the wrongs you might make? Are there pros versus cons to starting earlier, to starting my age versus starting your age, besides that bigger window that we have to kind of recollect maybe potential lost funds?
There are no cons to starting earlier. There are just pluses, just positives. The earlier you can start this, if you can start out honestly, and you can max out your contribution for an IRA, like that's what I did. That's what my dad encouraged us to do as kids. And I think it was, I don't know if it was $2,000 initially that we could contribute to a tax deferred IRA plan individually and $4,000 as a couple or something like that. But if you can do that consistently, and then once again, you put it in an S&P fund or something that would be somewhat aggressive but not too crazy, and you can do that consistently, and you start by the age of 25, it's not a matter of if you're going to be a millionaire, it's going to be when you're going to be a millionaire.
Gotcha.
You're going to get to that. If you have any kind of gains at all, you're going to be able to hit that $1 million threshold in your life. All you got to do is run some really simplistic models and just run the interest rates and things like that. So yeah, start as early as you can, and you may not be able to start maxing out on IRA contributions or 401ks or whatever, but put as much back as you can and live as frugally as you can those first years so that you can put as much back. The other thing, the best return you're ever going to get on your investment is 401k matches from your employer. Always make sure you max that out. You might, if you put, say, 7% in, your employer might match 4% of it.
Yeah.
Beg, borrow, or still find a way to get that 7% in, because the most risk-free investment you're ever going to get is that 4% that they match you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they vest those over a 5 to 7 year period, and you got to be there 5 to 7 year period, and they'll 1/5 or 1/7 of that you'll get every year. But if you can maximize those matches from your employer, that's one of the best and smartest things you can do.
Okay, good to know. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
So you're talking about IRAs, or those are the same thing as IRAs, correct?
401ks, IRAs, they're tax deferred devices.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Roth IRAs
Yeah.
or IRAs, do you recommend that the younger, because isn't it the younger you get into it, the more you collect over time, but you can't take it out until this very specific moment or age in your life?
Yeah, you're not supposed to take it out until about 62 to 65 range and up,
Gotcha.
when you're officially retired. So here's what I say. Roth IRAs, you're paying the tax on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not near as many rules on that. The tax deferred stuff is when you get into where you can't take them out until you're about 62 or 65. Or if you do, then you got to pay the taxes and a penalty,
Yes.
right? And so I think it used to be a 10% penalty. I think that's still the case. So you don't want to go there if you absolutely. Now you can do borrowing out of IRAs or 401ks for hardship, they call it. But I'd still try to stay away from that as much as you possibly can, because that can get pretty tempting and you can start using those as ATMs. Plus they got to be paid back someday or you're going to get taxed.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, the Roth, what my son is doing already and my daughter, and I'd advise anybody, is do part tax deferred and do part Roth, where you pay the taxes. Maybe do a 50-50 split on those. That way, when you do retire, you're going to have part of your income is going to be tax-free, and part of it you'll be paying taxes on.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's a smart decision
Yeah.
for sure. So are there any other ways, if people don't believe they're in positions to invest, that you recommend building that besides maybe just trying to get into your career path? I know some people struggle with getting into their career initially, but do you recommend any other types of ways to kind of grow your financial gains?
I'm going to go off on a little tangent here.
Sure.
And I'm going to give you all some of the best advice you'll ever get.
All right. Let's
Take
hear it.
notes, all right? Watch things like weddings. If you get married, watch how many bridegrooms and how many groomsmen that you have. You'll see a lot of weddings right now where they will have 8 to 12 on each side of them. That all sounds well and good, except first of all, that gets pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And second of all, you are beholden to those 8 to 12 people to do the same for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are having destination weddings, and then all the expenses that go with that, and maybe you got to rent tuxes, or you got to buy the dresses and the shoes and everything that goes with it. And that's why a lot of young people do not have the money to save, because they're spending it on things like that. And my wife and I got married. We had 4 on each side of us, and we watched our expenses on our wedding. You know, people are spending $5,000 to $10,000 just on the proposals anymore.
Yeah.
The engagement,
Exactly.
making big productions out of these things. The baby reveals they're spending money on. It's just, and people are on social media all the time, and they feel like they have to compete against all of that. And just show some discipline. Don't fall into those traps, and don't get sucker punched, because that's where your money goes. And then people figure out why they never have any money to save.
Gotcha.
And so, and you make those decisions when you're very young. And what did I tell you earlier? The best time to save is when early on.
Exactly.
And you're guaranteed to be a millionaire, but if you're spending it all on some of these other things,
Sure.
guess what? It's not there.
Well, you just broke a lot of hearts out
I
there.
know,
I'm
I
sure,
did.
Sure.
I'm going to play the bad cop there, I know.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to ask you,
Yeah.
the real serious questions, so we can get the real serious answers back. And coming from someone who literally just got back from a destination bachelor party where lots of money was spent, there was 8 guys.
Yep.
I totally understand what you're talking about.
Like I say,
for sure.
they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, they
no
are.
doubt about it.
Yeah.
But you know, the more people you have in your wedding, the more obligations you have to quid pro quo, right?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
true. Well, Larry, as we close down here this interview, I just wanted to leave the floor open to you, as it has been this whole time. But is there any questions that I haven't asked that you think are very important that the listeners should know the answers to?
Yeah. Again, and I know this isn't popular to say, but just watch what you're doing on social media for a couple of reasons. One is, again, falling into this competitive trap of keeping up with everybody. I even feel it at my age. I'm a Facebook dinosaur, okay? but I see all of my friends that are retiring, and or even just people that aren't retired, and I see them posting on all the trips they're doing to overseas and all these other places. My wife, we don't play that game. We go on vacations, we do things, but we don't fall into those traps even at this age. And so it's, you know, everybody is posting these outsized, larger than life images of themselves on social media, and you know, and everybody else is buying into that. And so don't fall for that trap. You know, I am not saying don't use social media. It's a wonderful tool, but just show some discipline and always have a plan. Always know where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And if you're married, make sure that your spouse is integrally involved in that, and try to make sure that you guys are in sync on that. And just try not to fall into the pressures. Study after study after study has showed that if you watch shows on TV, sitcoms, whatever, that the apartments these people live in, the houses they live in, do not match up with their jobs, do not match up with their income levels.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you a great example. If anybody watched The Big Bang Theory,
Sure.
Penny was a part-time waitress and lived in an apartment that you would have probably had to have made $80,000 a year to live in.
Sure.
And she was the only one living in that, across from 2 world-class physicists that were rooming together.
Yeah, that was
Nothing
insane.
made sense about that lifestyle. And that's what we're bombarded with. A lot of these influencers that you see, they're out there standing in front of private planes, they're in front of yachts, they're in front of all this stuff. I will guarantee you none of them own any of that.
Yeah.
They're just getting pictures with that stuff.
Yeah. Materialistic goods are a trend with younger people, that's for sure.
I tell you, I took back teaching principles of management. It's a freshman level class. I do operations management. It's a junior level. I do strat management, which is the last class they take on the way out the door. I didn't have to do principles of management. I asked for it back because I wanted to teach these folks right when they come in the door here, so that I can hopefully help head off some of those problems, because by the time I see them in junior and senior year, it's a little late. Maybe the genie's out of the bottle. Yeah. So I got all of this great advice from my dad.
Sure.
And I don't know sometimes if everybody's getting that kind of advice as they grow up. There's no classes in high school that teach a lot of this anymore. So that's why I'm very passionate about trying to share as much of this as I can.
Yeah, and we're glad to have you on. We really appreciate it. It's been a very great conversation. I've learned a lot from it, I know, and I'm sure students who take your courses will as well. Well, thank you again, Dr. Larry Straub. I appreciate
Really
you
enjoyed
coming on the Newman Bond, which is the official Newman podcast. You can find our episodes on YouTube or at newmanu.edu/podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
It's been a pleasure.
I get a lot more blessings out of
Really fun experience.
really the Newman experience.